kids that are under 16, these are actually kids. I think this is something that people tend to forget lately, and that actually there's much more than just internet out there. So yeah, I definitely support this, absolutely, 100%.
Social media really scares me. How old am I? I'm 35, and I'm trying to like wean myself off Instagram. I feel that I'm addicted to it. I'm really glad that I grew up in a time where it didn't exist. So I think of times when I was a teenager of sort of like bullying things that happened on, things like MySpace and Bebo and things like that. And now I think it's like times by 1,000,000, and it terrifies me. So for my baby, I love the idea of it not existing in the future.
Well, listening to that and joining me on the line now is James Erskine, our technology and social media expert and also friend of the show. James, great to have you back on Radio London. Now, you know lots about this subject. You always come on the show with a great insight. What's your take? Not only as a social media expert, but I guess as a parent as well. Are these platforms safe for children?
It's a really tough one, isn't it? Because I think you've probably got to look at what's happened over the last few years in order to analyse what's happened today. The first thing is, this is the last generation. You heard from a 35-year-old parent there, the last generation that had the option where social media was not a thing in their lives. And I think we all remember a halcyon time where we weren't on our devices a lot of the time. Now, technology is always evolving. It's always going to change, but has it changed our lives for the better? It definitely means that information is available on a more plentiful basis, and that broadly could be a good thing. But there are two things that you have to look at with social media. What is the content? So the stuff that's being served to us and to teenagers and children. And also, if you lift up the car bonnet, how does it literally work? What does the algorithm do? And what's happened over the last 12 months is two things. One, OfCom have found that still the content that children and teenagers are receiving is unsafe for them. And two, in that big court case in the States, we found out that not only the content, so let's just say all the content was 100% fine, even the content that is being served to people is being served by the algorithm in a way that is unsafe for teenagers and children. So it's not only what's been seen, it's how it's been seen.
So what would you say? What could be done to make them safer then?
So there's two different things. Do you remember we had a conversation on the radio show literally 5 years ago? And what was happening was Facebook was getting rid of lots of content moderators.
Yes.
Increasingly, as they've outsourced content moderation to algorithms, to technology, what has happened is people can game that system. There is a word now in youth vernacular that is unalive. People talk about people being unalive. And the reason why that is because if you say dead on social media, it chops it as potentially sensitive content. And that's not the only example. There's new words for various acts, various processes, and you can imagine what those are. But those have been literally invented to get round algorithms. There are whole ways of talking. Now, I'm not suggesting any amount of human beings can regulate all of social media, but one thing I think is that we talk about it with AI. You need a little bit of human connection and human understanding. Lots and lots of the content moderation has gone. And then I think you need more responsible algorithms. We've discussed before that when a young teenage girl uploads a photo to Instagram, if they take that photo down relatively quickly, they're more likely to be served an ad for a beauty product or a fashion product, i.e. the algorithm is thinking, oh no, I don't look very good in that photo, I haven't got enough likes, I'll take it down. Isn't that cynical? So the algorithm needs to be more responsible, and there needs to be a bit more human sense around the content that's been uploaded.
I mean, a lot of adults, parents, guardians will be thinking, will we ever go back? Or are we at this stage now, James, where we just are too reliant on social media as a population?
Well, we are hugely reliant, but here's something that occurred to me recently, and I was trying to look at the really good points of social media. It brings communities together. If you have a really niche interest, let's say you like a particular subgenre of music and you don't know anybody else in your own physical social circle, so you go online to find them, that is a good way to find a community, find your tribe. But here's the thing, Shay.
Yes.
You don't need social media for that. You could go to a website. Nobody is saying ban all things digital. No one's saying ban the internet. What we're saying is looking at these big social networks. So actually, I do think there are some examples of technologies changing, shifting as new technologies have replaced them, and potentially safer technologies. We all know now about, organically farmed products, and we've changed that in a way. We know now to look at, human-made products, things that are ethically produced. So there is things like that. There's restrictions that have come into play. We now know that you have to wear a cycle helmet, even though it isn't. You see what I mean? So there are things, there are examples. I think what we might see is we're already starting to see a backlash. I think some of that backlash will be regulation driven, and I think some of that backlash will be human being driven. And I do think we'll start to see a shift whereby people are consuming digital content in a weird way that is a bit safer. There's already a YouTube Kids. There wasn't a YouTube Kids many years ago.
True.
That's a safe environment for children to watch with no algorithms around, and only registered content holders can upload content. So that's an example.
Just finally, do you think off the back of OfCom saying TikTok and YouTube are not safe enough for kids, that more change will come directly from those two platforms in the coming months, if not years?
I do. We've already seen quite a cynical push from Instagram, Meta and TikTok to say that their teen accounts work in a different way to how they used to. The parents, the carers, the guardians have got to change the settings on there. So I do think that it will be now their move to move next to make them appear more safe. But I also think that this is a really good example of the regulator actually getting some teeth. This is the most damning verdict that has come from a regulator, except for in Australia where there's been an outright ban. So you can see which way the tide is going, perhaps.
Always a pleasure having you on the show, James. Thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, Shay.
Thank you. James Erskine, technology and social media expert.